2 laps by Nicholas Latifi and George Russell, set 14 seconds apart in wet and drying conditions at the circuit Spa-Francorchamps, constitute this week's Workday Good Lap versus Great Lap. Let's see how both drivers got on in this Q2 session, comparing video and data. Both opening the final corner on their way down to La Source and both braking on the inside to keep their cars off the slippery rubber which is on the normal dry line. That will give them more grip as they head down to turn 1, but not enough grip for Latifi, who locks up the inside front. He gets away with it though by putting the car off the rubber again on the exit and gaining more traction than George Russell, down towards the famous Eau Rouge Raidillon sweep. Both drivers are flat out, despite the wet conditions through Eau Rouge and Raidillon. George Russell, though, has less load and less movement in the car, and will gain by using less exit curve, disturbing the car less and gaining time all the way down the Kemmel Straight, with potential assistance from a tow from the car ahead. Nicholas Latifi will brake off the rubber line again and take more speed into the first part of the Les Combes chicane. Russell will try much harder to keep his car on line through the first 2 elements of the chicane, working the steering wheel to make sure he has a nice position between the 2 elements. Latifi doesn't do this, bullies the car through, but recovers it on the dry patch mid to exit right in the middle of the 3 elements. Russell is able to take more speed through the final part, Malmedy, but it's not because he's set the car up in a nice position on the road, it's purely because he's braver with this outside curb, allowing him to take more throttle through Malmedy and indeed more kilometres per hour than his teammate, stealing time back. On the way down to the Bruxelles hairpin, they're going to use totally different techniques. Russell is able to brake later because he's not aiming at all for the apex, looking for the karting line, where the grip is in the wet conditions, round the outside. Latifi chooses to struggle on the apex to try to get the car to the grippy area just behind the traditional apex, whereas now Russell is the one struggling on the rubber line. It'll be Russell that gains time though, and he'll gain time again as Latifi has this nasty oversteer in the mid-corner of turn 9, heading down to the Pouin double left-hander. This is such a huge challenge in wet and drying conditions. You've got to be so accurate, placing the car on the dry part of the track. Russell simply estimates the track conditions better than Latifi and is able to take more speed through the mid-corner by getting off the brakes and getting in the throttle. He's incredibly patient through the first part of the Pif-Paf chicane, gaining the time through the exit, whereas Latifi charges in a little more. He will get a bit of oversteer in the mid-corner of Stavelot 1, with Russell being much more neat and tidy. But it's a get-out-of-jail-free for Latifi, as both drivers have a bit of an ankle flex through the second part of Stavelot, negating the potential benefit down to Blanchimont for Russell of doing that corner more sweetly. They'll both head through these sweepers that are absolutely flat, wet or dry, but it'll be Russell who's braver again, borrowing this bit of tarmac to open the radius of the corner, allowing him to turn the car less and asking the engine to push the tyres less hard across the surface of the road, meaning that he loses less speed and therefore less time as he tries to turn the car through the radius of Blanchimont. A different technique again for Russell, who points the car at a dry patch he's found on the way into the final chicane and brakes extremely late, as you can see from his line, falling down towards the bottom of the speed trace and his brake block coming later in the telemetry. He finds his lovely dry patch, cranks the lock and points the car in. Latifi is much wider and has to tolerate the wet patch before he can get the front to commit. He also compounds this issue by having an oversteer moment across the curb, covering this by throwing the car directly into the second apex, but the rear is really upset for Latifi, constituting a big time loss to his teammate Russell, who would make his way through this session and eventually put it P2 in Q3 in his Williams.